Hey, good morning, everybody. Jordan Hillstrom with Xeratec, software development here. I have an awesome friend here that we've been collaborating on a couple of things, and I'm excited to speak to you today about some stuff. So I was hoping you'd introduce yourself and give you a little bit of background of who you are and where you're coming from.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate that, Jordan. Hey, guys, Eric Ozimick. I reside in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and currently a senior director with Corvid Cyberdefense.
Awesome. So starting these things out, I'd like to get personable for a second. Give me one thing about yourself that maybe a lot of people don't know.
Well, actually, my background's not in tech, right? So you would think that, especially given a company of the size and scale of Corvid Technologies or Corvid Cyberdefense, that I'd have this background in tech. It's actually a background in soccer. After college, I played soccer for a few years in the league and MLS, and had a chance to bounce around the country and spend some time in England, which is pretty wild. So, yeah, my background's actually in soccer, and yeah, utilize a lot of the team tactics and things about overcoming obstacles from soccer and now into tech. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation for sure. I can feel it already.
Yeah.
No, I love the
Right.
fact you're applying those principles though, because I do think there's a lot of parallel paths for sure,
Yeah.
or intersections, maybe you want to call it. So one thing I wanted to kind of talk about to kind of set the scene for today is I have a professional coach, and one of the things that he's working with me on even currently is diamond mapping, understanding that our lives are so intricate, and there's if one thing's out of balance, something else is probably going to be suffering or lacking as well.
Yeah.
So talking about business, we have a lot of clients from startup innovators, entrepreneurs to Fortune 500 companies. And across the board, there's one common theme that we see pretty regularly is there's oftentimes they're very strong in certain areas, but then there's areas that they just don't focus on, which is fine, but then end up lacking, or there's a vulnerability there. And one
Sure.
area I see a pretty common theme is the area of like cyber threats. And we definitely are in the software space and we deal with these things, but we're not the subject matter expert here. We usually rely on partners, like companies like yours, even to help our partners with this. So just in general, can you give me from like the layperson's perspective, like what is a cyber attack? What's a cyber threat? Kind of maybe lay the foundations here for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, cyber attack or cyber threat, data breach, all that sort of in the same family. They're very much interrelated. I mean, really, it's an exploitation of someone's data. We think about, our house right now, the house I'm sitting in here. I'm visiting my parents in North Carolina. We protect our house with, layers of security, whether it's windows, doors, locks, alarm system, etc. Well, if someone breaks through that, that would obviously be a breach of this house, right, or an attack on this house. Think about your data security, your data warehouse, all that information that sits or resides in your computer or in your software system is very, very attractive to what we call adversaries or the bad guys. And so when someone penetrates any kind of security measures that you have within your data warehouse system, that would be a cyber attack or some sort of breach.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Thanks for
Yeah.
kind of giving me some foundational truths here. One thing that I wanted to kind of talk about before we go any further is, and to lay some context for this piece, I was sitting in a insurance renewal meeting for our commercial line, and the agent we use is phenomenal. He's a great dude. I think he really advocates for our company, and he's a good agent for us.
Sure.
And he came in through renewal, and he's like, "Hey, I feel strongly about you guys purchasing a cyber policy." And it's one of those things we hadn't put a lot of time into thinking about insuring ourselves and creating a policy or buying a policy to protect against cyber. And so he went on through some stuff, and I'm not like judging him or faulting him for this, but I stopped and asked. I said, with what I'm hearing today, based off the fact that if we purchase this and we get a cyber attack and let's say it's a ransomware and it locks out our system to where
Yeah.
we're pretty much cut off at the heels, right?
Right.
And the insurance company will come in and will pay essentially pay the ransom to free our system. And so to me as a collective, we are actually building, in my opinion, kind of this legitimate industry where these cyber people come through and they get good at what they're doing. They know they're going to get paid for it, and there's really no one there to stop them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've talked about this at all or if you thought through this, but to me, I want to have a couple minute dialogue about, are we creating an animal almost by the wrong type of preventative maintenance here?
Yeah, it's very insightful, man. I appreciate that perspective. It's interesting you said that because we internally at my Corvid Cyber Defense team and I have been talking a lot about that. And one of our but one of our philosophies with our team is the prevention surely must be better than the cure, right? I mean, again, using the house analogy, if I get very, very good at fire restoration, but I forget about doing things to prevent the fire from even starting, it almost sounds a little bit, ignorant, right? And almost a little bit counterintuitive. So really, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that there's, you want to have top to bottom, you want to have a prevention platform in place. You want to have what we call prevention, detection, and response. God forbid all those things get bypassed or exploited. You certainly want to have a quote cleanup plan to deal with the ransomware, to deal with some of these attacks and breaches. But I would contest, yeah, Jordan, I think you're on the right page, man. I mean, it's not just about having the insurance company, in your example, pay the ransomware and now we're back to business, because it's not that simple. You're dealing with things like reputation damage, downtime of business, the frustration, the concern, almost the dirty feeling that, hey, are they still even around? And someone got access to your data, probably already resold it multiple times on the dark web before they were even picked up. Weeks, if not months, have gone by. So it's more than just, hey, let's clean up the mess and back to business as normal. It's not that simple. And so we really, really stress with people, look, you got to have some things in place to prevent the storm from even happening.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And kind of my history as far as, careers and what I've been involved with is I spent some time in law enforcement. And so often you respond to these, bird calls or people had broken into a house and they're obviously long gone by then. And they're like, well, we had a security company, and they called the cops, like, you guys arrived. Right. And I'm not against those tools. They're one of many, right? But I do feel, though, that we give this false sense of security with these systems that, well, we have these systems in place so we're protected. And a lot of it comes from the marketing game that these companies project to their clients and their customers that you buy our system, we're going to keep you safe, 24/7 monitoring, right? Well, the fact of the matter is that's a delayed response. Even from the time the individual gets to your house, breaks in, the systems are tripped. There's a delay from the time the cops are called. It's a 3 to 7 minute response time from any agency right now, probably. So there's this weird, like chasm we're dealing with here. So people aren't protecting themselves. They're not going through the motions to figure out, what do I do in case someone does come to my house? So they put all their eggs in this basket. It's like jumping out of an airplane with one parachute, forgetting the reserve. Like, well, I got a good one, right? So this is an area where, I need to definitely sharpen myself on. So so having a guy like you in my corner has been huge. So just in general, can you tell me, like, are there current threats that you're seeing that are new that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of that maybe they should be?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I think, if you were just asked the general public, right? And I mean, I'm talking to even people, whether they're, young folks and still in college or, new business owners or entrepreneurs or legal professionals, seasoned surgeons, anyone, any industry, any marketplace, of any socioeconomic background, most people would say, yeah, I've heard of breaches, but it's only really in the Targets of the world, the Kia auto dealers. I'm a soccer guy, so Manchester United got attacked, this past December. So we hear about these big giant companies, and they're very, very much in the news. They're very much mainstream. Here's the only problem with that, right? Is it becomes unrelatable to the common person, to the person who owns the 10-person dental clinic, to the 20-person law firm, to the 50-person manufacturing company. It becomes, oh, that'll happen to them, but I'm untouchable. I'm not breach worthy, right? There's like, why would anyone want to attack me, Eric? I've got a 5-person restaurant or whatever that looks like. And so what we're seeing right now is the bad guys, right? The adversaries, domestically here, certainly many of them internationally, because they know you think that way, that's why they go after you. See, the bigger enterprise companies, generally speaking, do a pretty good job of creating exhaustion or fatigue. Well, what we're seeing is an increase in the attacks on the small and mid-sized business owner world, right? Why is that? Well, because they're vulnerable. The measures that they have in place were 3-4 years ago, so they're very obsolete. I mean, frankly, they probably, it's been maybe a year, if not more, since they've ever had an assessment or any kind of holistic evaluation of their current security posture. And so what we call their security hygiene is not very clean, right? And so these bad guys are attacking the small to mid-sized business owner arena, frankly, like never before. We're seeing it. And to me, this is where I'm very passionate, right? Our team at Corvid is because when a small to mid-sized business owner gets attacked, it's almost always unrecoverable. And not to like overly make this a statistician call here, but the right data typically doesn't lie, right? The data shows that a small business owner or even mid-sized business owner, when they get attacked, typically within 6 months, they're no longer around. Now, Target, they're doing just fine. No one likes that they got attacked. I know it really stinks for them, but the reality is they're going to be just fine. The small business owner, not so much. So again, very vulnerable. Their thinking, their mentality is they're not breach worthy. The bad guys know this, therefore they go after them. Does that make sense?
It does. And you know what, it's something I heard in the tone of what you're saying is because these individuals that are our target right now, more vulnerable than ever, because they're so hardworking and master of the craft in which they're doing, like what they're pursuing as their business line. They're so good at that. They focus there, where they should. So they don't spend the energy somewhere else protecting, where they're potentially vulnerable. And that's where, knowing people like you and I'm going to talk for a second here about evaluations, but knowing the right partners in the industry to rely on to make sure that we have some protection here. Because oftentimes you get these guys that come in and try to do the hard sell of you have to have, a 4,000 point inspection and you have to have all these different layers of protection. If you don't have all of these, you're screwed. So what happens, they kind of throw their hands up and say, well, bag it. There's no way. I'll take the risk. It's worth it. Right? I've gone this long, why not another couple of years? So, from a very, like you mentioned holistically, from, a very practical thing you can do. Like if you were to say, this is one thing I really, whether it's my company or somebody else's, what's kind of one thing that you would point someone to that maybe heard something today that was like, maybe I am vulnerable. Can you give them one or two practical tips to maybe protect themselves a little more today than they were yesterday, and then maybe understand where to go from here?
Yeah, that's good point. Look, I'll share this for sure. Is we've all heard this, right? The most expensive phrase in business is, well, that's just how we've always done things. Okay?
I hate it.
The reality of it is that right, wrong, or indifferent. What's the silver lining of this unprecedented, overused word, but unprecedented external force called the coronavirus, this pandemic last year plus? If anything, to me, what we can take out of this, trying to create a positive out of a very awful situation, is this should absolutely inspire, motivate, just explode you to say, hey, everything's worth another look, right? And working from home, the increased mobility, obviously there's things like, you have very sensitive data traveling to Starbucks now, to Panera, your living room, your bedroom, never mind just the office. So here's where I'm going with this. It is, like you said, whether it's with us or not, at the end of the day, for us, and I know I speak for you, Jordan, and we just want people to get an evaluation, right? It's worth taking a look. I always tell people, halfway kidding, if you could see what I see on a daily basis and what we're exposed to in our team internally here, it's like stuff out of a movie, right? Don't be another statistic, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this is not one of those things where anyone wants to say, I told you so, but we no different than you probably go get a physical health check every year. You probably take your car to the mechanic to get an inspection every year. In fact, you have to. Sometimes I wish the government would say you have to at least get an evaluation once a year on your security. It's that big, right? You spent decades of your life probably building a company. You probably raised capital. You probably leveraged your house as collateral to get the loan to build the company. Man, everyone's relying on you to perform and win in business, and we want to help you do that. The last thing that you need, I'm sure you would agree, is some knucklehead from overseas or Russia or here domestically obliterating you simply because you just didn't have the right protection, right? And so all the things that we think about in our head, it's too expensive, it's too pricey, I'm not worthwhile, who really wants me, I'm nothing big to the bad guys. Listen, please, I'm pleading with everyone, listen to this. If the Homeland Security, FBI, Pentagon, government, and all of our contacts in the security world say that the SMB community is under attack like never before, isn't it worth taking a half hour, again, through us or some other company, just to get a look? It's no cost. Just get a look. Just get some other eyes, some experts on what you're doing. And maybe they make a recommendation like MFA or multi-factor authentication would be a quick one to do, right? Some security awareness training for your team. I mean, how many people are multitasking at home and probably clicking on stuff that they otherwise wouldn't click on because it looks better than ever, right? We have tax season, we have vaccines out right now. These are all things that the bad guys are using to try to get into your system. So yeah, get a diagnostic, get a look for sure.
I definitely appreciate that. And the cool takeaway for me is it doesn't have to be like monumental to start making a change today to get better. Even things like a lot of companies use 365, like Microsoft suite of services. And especially for the business side, if you knew that there was a ton of resources that were free, or I guess I shouldn't say free, you're already paying for them, but most often are not tapped into or utilized by the companies. So there's things in there that can really help, especially your emails and your SharePoint and a lot of places where you're actually storing your data to run your business, the operations. A lot of those are very vulnerable, but they have tools built in. You just have to turn them on. You got to start using them. So I do think, a diagnostic check, like you mentioned, is to me vital to keep your doors open. To me, it's like one of those things that you're failing. You just don't know it yet because you haven't seen the symptoms pop up. There's something growing inside. It's not good. It's ugly. But we can cut it off before it becomes symptomatic. And that's really the heart of this conversation is just stop for a second, evaluate where you're at, and plug into somebody in your network. And hopefully guys like you, Eric, can be a good guide here. So appreciate your time.